Hi, I'm Emma Lou, the Creative Director at Heartfelt Creations. We are going to be showing you a fun new technique using our Christmas cheer collection. If you look at this tag, there's a lot of distressing done on it. We used a glitter technique, we used some distressing with the glimmer mist. So we're going to get started showing you some of the different ways you can work with those techniques. We're going to be using some of our new stamps from the Petite Poinsettia pre-cut set. This actually matches with the layered poinsettia shapeabilities. And then we're also going to be using the Dove of Peace pre-cut set, which matches with our Christmas cheer die. This die has 4 different dies. It has 2 bells, an angel, and a dove. So let's get started. So we're going to start out with the glitter technique that we used on this dove. So to get started, I cut a colored cardstock, and I'm using a double-sided sticky paper. So we're going to peel off the one side. This is usually the hardest part of this process. So we'll stick this directly to the cardstock. Once that's adhered, you go back and you peel off the opposite side. So this piece at this point is very sticky. Now we're going to go back, grab our tidy tray, and sprinkle a microfine glitter over the top. With the technique we're using, we're going to stamp on top of the glitter, so that gives you an image that's completely covered with glitter, and you really get a very quick image that looks like you spent a lot of time with it. With the microfine glitter, it is the finest texture of glitter, so if your bottle does not say microfine, it will not work with this technique. It has the texture of a baby powder, so after you've put the glitter on it, the top is actually smooth. Now since it's so fine, I go back with a brush and I just quickly brush off the excess that did not stick to the tape. And once that's brushed off, that glitter is on there for good, so you don't have to wait for it to dry. At this point, we'll put this glitter back into our tidy tray and we're ready to stamp our image. I'm using the Peace Dove with the Black Brilliance ink. So I'll ink that up really good and stamp this right on top of the glitter. Now when you're using this technique, you could choose to just leave it stamped, or you could also go back and emboss on top of it, which is what we're going to do at this point. We have an aged mahogany embossing powder. Aged mahogany is basically a dark burgundy, so I'll sprinkle that across the top, tap that off, and you can see we're going to really have a dark image. So we're going to go back and use our heat embossing tool and heat set this. After you've embossed the image, you're ready to go back and cut it out with a coordinating die. If you have not used our dies in coordinating stamps, you want to make a template so you can see where this die is going to cut out the stamped image. So I took a plain piece of white cardstock. We're going to tape our die to that cardstock, run it through your machine, and when it comes out, we're going to use that as a template and line it up with our dove. After you've run it through the machine, just pop out the piece it just cut. Throw that away, and then go back to the piece that you want to cut out and just lift this up, and you can see, let's just bring this in here, you can see exactly where this is going to cut out this dove. And once that's lined up, pop the die right back down. Make sure you press this tape down in the center and that secures it, and then you're ready to run that through the machine and cut that out. After you've cut out your image, you could go back. If the image would have designs in it, you could color it with your Copic markers. But with this dove, we're going to shade around the edges with some glimmer mist. And to do that, I'm just going to spray some of the brick glimmer mist onto my surface. The surface I'm using is actually made by Basil. It's a non-porous work surface. I'm using a little sponge dauber, and I just pick up a little bit of this glimmer mist from my work surface, and we'll just go back and just sponge right around this pad. You'll do this all the way around, and once you've sponged all the way around with this glimmer mist, you'll go back and just add a little bit more shading right in the center. So I'll just continue doing this all the way around until the dove is completed. So after you're finished with the dove, we'll move on to the poinsettias. I'll show you how to color them with the glimmer mist and then how to bend and shape those. I stamped a couple sizes of the petite poinsettia and cut it out with the layer poinsettia die. I stamped it with gold Encore ink and embossed it with the antique gold embossing powder. So to color these with the Distress Glimmer Mist, what I'll do is I'll take my brick, I'm using the brick red, and I'll just give these a couple squirts. And it can be kind of random. Just do a little bit more over here on that side. Once you've done that, this is where it gets a little bit messy. You'll just pick this up and you'll just kind of rub that into your mat. You can flip this around and you can get some more color on this side. Now I'm going to go back, and this is the Coffee Shop Glimmer Mist, and I'm going to spray a little bit of that over here on the side, and I'm going to go back and take my poinsettia and just dip the petals of this poinsettia into this brown. When this dries, this actually gives it kind of a vintage, the tips are a little bit darker and it's kind of shaded. So we'll turn this around. You can kind of see the tips there are darker. The back's a little bit whiter yet. If you want to have that colored, you can just go back and just rub that into your glimmer mist that's on your mat. Since this is a non-porous surface, it really slides around very nicely. So we'll just lay this one aside to dry. We'll do the, I'll just spray a couple more squirts of the brick onto my pad so I have a little bit more just to rub the poinsettia in on the back. Okay, that's good. It's a little bit more on the front maybe. Okay, and then we'll go back to the brown. Get a little bit of dark brown in the corners. So this really is a quick coloring technique. It is wet, which you'll just lay your flowers aside to dry, or if you're in a hurry, you can go back and let me just spray this flower just one more time aside. There we go. If you're in a hurry to have the flowers dry, you can also heat set them with your heat embossing tool. And we'll just add a little bit more brown over here. This is definitely more messy technique, so your fingers will get covered with whatever color you're using, but it's fun. It tells your friends that you've been having fun and creating something interesting. Okay, so this one you can see kind of the dark tips. So you'll lay that aside to dry. And on this tag, you'll also notice that we have a very vintage piece of lace here. That was done with our decorative lace die, so I'm going to go back and distress that one right away, and then we'll lay that one aside to dry as well. So I pre-cut this decorative lace border with the HCD 713, and I'm just going to spray some glimmer mist on the top and along the bottom. This is using the brick, and then I'm going to spray some olive vine glimmer mist right down the center. And you can spray this randomly if you're wanting to see a little bit different color. You can continue to spray. I'm going to spray a little bit of brown in the areas that I have some white on it yet. We'll spray some in there, there, and then I'll go back and I'll spray the whole thing with the Glimmer Mist Gold. Now I'll flip this around. Actually, let me just rub this around a little bit. That'll get the back covered. See, the back is kind of white yet, so what we'll do is we'll spray some green all the way across the back. Now this is pretty bright green, so I'll go back, add a little bit of brown, and just remember you can customize this and just spray it until it looks like you like it. Okay, so that looks good. Now at this point, we'll bring this around and you really have a nice color. So this is very wet. Now to distress this and give it a very vintage feel, what you're going to do is you're going to bring this into your hand and you're just going to scrunch this up. Now, if you've never done this before, it really feels pretty weird because you're like, oh, I can't do that to my pretty lace border that I just cut out, but you'll just scrunch that. You be careful with it, but you can bring it back up, and you can kind of see, okay, it's getting a distressed look, but it's not quite what I like to see yet, so just scrunch it again. Just do this a couple times. So this is actually kind of like a wet rag at this point. So there we go, we've got a really wet look there, you can see that. And what I'll do is you can heat set this or lay it aside to dry. I'm going to lay this one aside to dry, and then we'll bring back one that I pre-did that's dry already. So you can kind of see how that looks at this point. Once your lace piece is dry and you want to add a little bit more of a distressed look, just go back with a dark brown chalk ink and a sponge and just hit some of the top areas of this lace. Once this is dried, this is very stiff, and you can kind of see how that just gives it more of an aged look. So you can add more of the brown, less of the brown, just kind of customize it to what you're trying to achieve. So this is how the lace should look once you're finished with it, and once it's dry, it's really stiff, which is amazing. Now we're going to go back to our poinsettias. Let me just put this aside. And these are all dry. And when I bend and shape these, I use this set of stylus tools, and this mat is very key for this technique. It's very squishy, so it really helps with the bending and shaping process. But what I'll do for these poinsettias is I'll actually flip them upside down, and I'll take my stylus tool and I'll just bend those petals. I'll just push them down into this mat, and I'll do this all the way around, and that just gives it some great shape. So it's not a difficult technique. A lot of people will wonder, how do we bend and shape our flowers? This is one tool that we use a lot. You can see that this really gives this poinsettia a great distressed look. So we'll do the same for this one. These poinsettias are all dry, and once they're dry, they're actually pretty stiff. So I'll bring this over and flip them around to the front, and then I'll just press the center down. That just kind of curves those petals right up. So you could layer those on top of each other. You're starting to have a poinsettia flower there. We'll do this smaller one. So you can use this technique with your poinsettia or any of the other three-dimensional flowers that you have purchased from us in the past. There we go. And then you just layer this one into the center. So obviously your flower size will depend on the flower sizes you started out with. On the tag, we finished up with a pearl in the center of these flowers. These were a little bit smaller. The leaves, we used the same technique. We just used a green glimmer mist instead of the red. If you want more details on how the background was stamped for this tag, you will see those online. Those details, you can actually punch 3415 into the search box, and that will bring up the poinsettia set. Click on it and it'll bring up the instructions for this tag.